A good story with an ordinary screenplay fails to impress, but an ordinary story with an interesting screenplay gets all the attention. What is it that makes a screenplay interesting? Structure? Characters? Turning points? They all matter, but what matters the most to the audience is what's going to happen next. One simple way to do that is to pose a question in the beginning of a sequence and answer it at the end. Let's take an example of a boy meets girl sequence, consisting 6 to 7 scenes showing the boy falling in love with her. What is the obvious question that would come to the audience's mind? Is she going to fall for him? They will get the answer at the end of the sequence, when the boy proposes to the girl. But how do we make this sequence more layered and interesting? Simple. Before you answer that question at the end of the sequence, you raise another question in the audience's mind. This can be done by introducing the girl's dad into the sequence and revealing his character through a scene. What if he's a very possessive father? Now the audience begins to wonder, will the girl's father approve of their relationship? That makes 2 questions. One, which would be answered at the end of the sequence, and the other, which would be answered in the next sequence, or maybe much later in the movie. Keep the audience busy by ensuring that at least 1 or 2 questions remain unanswered throughout the movie. According to Robert Mckee, a writer must attract both sides of human nature, intellect and emotion. Curiosity is the intellectual need to answer questions. As the protagonist is put at increasingly greater risk, the audience wonders, what's going to happen next? The biggest of them all is the climax question. What will happen at the end of the movie? Think of all the average films we've sat through, just waiting to see how it ends in the climax. That's the power of curiosity. As Charles Reed noted, we may make the audience cry or laugh, but above all, we make it wait. Concern, on the other hand, is the emotional need. Once you emotionally care for the protagonist, the question gets even more compelling. The audience begins to ask the same question. What's going to happen next? But with a lot of concern for the protagonist.
Dad, 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 Dad!
The screenwriter must create magic by playing with the intellectual and emotional needs of the audience.
Yes, Simba, but let me explain.
Callie Khouri, who won the Oscar for the Best Original Screenplay for the 1991 film Thelma and Louise, took the audience for an interesting ride through the movie. The story is about 2 friends, Thelma and Louise, who set out for a weekend vacation in the mountains to take a break from their dull, boring, and monotonous lives in Arkansas. Thelma, a housewife, is married to a disrespectful and controlling husband for years now, while sharp-tongued Louise works as a waitress in a diner and is dating an easygoing musician who is on the road most of the time. On the way, they stop at a roadhouse bar, where Thelma gets drunk and dances with a flirtatious stranger. He takes her to the parking lot and tries to rape her, until Louise intervenes and threatens to shoot him with a gun pointed at his head. As the women walk away, the stranger yells he should have continued the rape, causing Louise to shoot him in a fit of rage. He drops dead, and the 2 women immediately drive off. That's plot point 1. They contemplate going to the cops, but fear that no one will believe a claim of attempted rape, as Thelma was drinking and dancing with the stranger all through the night. They would be facing a murder charge. It was not even an act of self-defense. They finally decide to flee to Mexico by road.
Spoilers.
Louise draws all her lifetime savings, and they both decide to leave their frustrating lives behind forever and escape. But the cops are slowly zeroing in on them. Thelma gets into a romantic fling on the way and loses all the money in a motel to the same guy, who turns out to be a thief out on parole. It's all over for them. That's when Thelma comes into her own and robs a convenience store to make up for the lost money. There is no going back from here. The FBI would charge them now with murder and armed robbery. Thelma and Louise realize that back home, the FBI have their phones tapped. An offer to surrender is rejected. They drive on, realizing that this vacation turned out to be a far more satisfying one than their boring lives that they were living. We learn that Louise had a terrible experience in her younger days back home in Texas. She had been raped. From here on, they let loose, lock up a cop in his car's trunk, and blow up a truck whose driver makes snide gestures at them. Finally, the cops close in on them, chasing them to the edge of the Grand Canyon. Either they surrender and go to prison, or the rest is history. What an interesting screenplay, appealing to our intellect as well as emotion. It asks the most important question all through the film: what's going to happen next? Please like and subscribe to this channel if this video was helpful. And if you want a different take on the 3-act structure, click on the link in the description below.